Thanks very much, Willie, and good morning, everyone. So we'll kick into action straight away. We'll certainly get questions from yourselves for Eoin as well. He loves hard questions, so don't spare him in any way. But I'll start with an easy one on. You first got involved with inter-county teams as a 12-year-old back in 1994. So maybe just tell us about your experience as a young fella coming in to an under-14 squad as a 12-year-old sub-goalkeeper.
Yeah, I did, and it was mainly, I suppose, there was no development squads when I kind of started out. So, like, my first introduction to any inter-county was as a 12-year-old with the Tip under-14s back around 1994. But I found when I was playing back then, you were protected. Like, so you weren't called out for Mullinahone club training, you weren't maybe wanted for your divisional training. Once you were with your Tip under-14 squad, you were with your Tip under-14 squad, and your manager at the time, he was happy with that. And I think as a player, you were happy with that. So I suppose it's probably what I'm talking about here, maybe in my early career, is not relevant to what's actually happening now. But I definitely felt protected. You were playing with one team and one team only, and once that team was finished, then you'd maybe fall back into play with your club.
And what was the significance of that for your later playing career? The fact that you were protected and not too many demands put on you at that time?
Well, I think it definitely done away with player burnout as an underage player. Now, there wasn't an argument maybe then you could say that, you know, if you were a good player in your own club as a 12-year-old, you were probably playing under 14 and playing under 16 as well. But in my case, I was playing probably under 16, maybe in goal. So, but you definitely were protected. Like for example, when I was involved with Tip under 16s, you would have been involved with Tip under 16s and that was it. And that followed on to Tipperary minors as well. When I got to the minor age group, I would have been in school in St. Kieran's. And I never felt that Tipperary minors put pressure on me to come training in those years. So I trained with St. Kieran's, and when the All-Ireland Colleges competition was over, I fell back in with Tipperary minors then. And I think the minor management at the time understood that they were getting high quality hurling with St. Kieran's. Yeah. So they were comfortable that you were getting top level training, and so I felt protected, I suppose, as an underage player.
Yeah, and that has very much changed now, because one of the challenges we hear for players is that they're spending a lot of time with a lot of teams, and that's a difficult thing for them to manage. So what advice would you have for coaches here who are working with development squads and players who are on multiple panels?
Well, I think what's happening now is coaches, I suppose, are being that bit selfish, and there's so much scrutiny now from social media and from Facebook and all other angles of teams. So everybody knows now who's involved with Tip under 14, 15, 16, 17s. Yeah. And I think if that management committee feel that if their team doesn't do well, doesn't perform well and doesn't ultimately win, that they'll be ruled out of contention for further management teams down the road. So I think from the management side, you have to rise above that, and you have to just protect the player. Yeah. Obviously you want them, when your tournament is coming up, you want them maybe X amount of times, but I don't think you can be flogging them, is the word I'm saying. So I think it definitely benefited a couple of us when we were underage. You were involved with one team and that team only, and like if you're reaching for the gear bag every night, there's mental fatigue, and then obviously if you're training most nights, there's physical fatigue as well. And I think mental fatigue is nearly worse than physical fatigue, and I didn't have that when I was growing up along. You were involved with one team and one team only. When that team was beaten or knocked out of its competition, then you fell back in with the next team.
And when you talk about mental fatigue, what sort of things do you hear from younger players now about that?
I suppose I probably hear more from managements pulling them left, right and centre, like as in some guys are having matches maybe at 11 o'clock this morning, and next thing there's a club bonding day on and they're trying to pull them to that, and then maybe there's another club training session. Like for a minor or an under 21 player this time of year, there could be a club football game on, there could be a team event on, team event, and there could be even an under 21 or a colleges game on this evening as well. So I think that just that brings on player burnout big time.
And what do you feel a coach can do to change that? Because you say coaches are under pressure and they're looking after their own futures, and they have to be seen to do things.
It's easier said than done, but coaches obviously have to communicate with other coaches. And I suppose you have to start out early in the year and find out what players you have at your disposal and what teams you're involved with, and try and get early and get a structure and an agenda in place early with the other management teams, just to see how you can. like Mickey Hart when Tyrone were going well, I think he used to only train him maybe twice a week and they'd have a game at the weekend. Now that was probably 8-9 years ago. You know, and he was happy with that, and they'd probably do their gym programs then. But it's to keep the hunger in a team, like what a manager wants. Like I know when you're playing yourself, like so you want that hunger chasing down the ball, like and getting into tackles and that. But if you're consistently doing that 5 or 6 nights a week in training, it's very hard to replicate that on the Sunday because you're not going to be able. So personally, for me, the game is the big thing. That's when, as a management committee or selector, that's when you want your to see your players at their best, like you know. But I think all this training and too much of that, you're not going to see that when it comes to the weekends.
Yeah. So less is more is what you're saying. And then in terms of the good things, what were the main things you learned as an underage player? What were the key things that you picked up from coaches at that stage that helped your future career as a senior player?
Yeah, well, there was things I picked up, and then there was things that are happening now that I would love to have been involved in when I was younger. Like obviously the skills of the game and all that, that's what you were coached, and it was more in the skills of the game than on strength and conditioning when I was younger. So it was all ball work, so it was constantly ball in hand. But like I'd probably love to be starting out again at 14, 15, just on the strength and conditioning side and the diet and nutrition side of it, because like I think that, you know, injury prevention and all that, you're more aware, like, and players are more educated. I would love to have been educated on all that from 13, 14, 15 up along, because I think that would have stood to me. Like I remember a time maybe as a 16-year-old going off doing weights on my own, because I would have heard that to be inter-county player you needed to be that bit stronger, and I'd probably definitely done more harm than good, like. You know, and I can probably hear that a bit going around to the odd schools now, and the odd time when you'd be invited in, even the teachers are worried of students just after school hitting the gym, tubs of whey protein and that. And you know, if they ask questions to their coaches, and maybe if their coaches communicate with them and educate them more, I think it can be more helpful. So it's a case of everyone kind of wants to get bigger, wants to get leaner from what they're seeing on the TV and what they're hearing, but sometimes they're doing more harm than good. So it's all about educating the player. Like in the latter stages of my inter-county career, over the last 5 or 6 years, maybe because you're coming to the end, you pay more attention, but I definitely would have felt that I was educated more on diet, nutrition, dealing with physios, all that, like, and it would have helped my career, I'd say, if I had to be doing that when you were maybe 15, 16, 17. So, you know, like, I heard Brian O'Driscoll one day saying that he finds some of these rugby players on these academies and that, they're all bulked up, lean and all that, but some of them can't zip a pass, like, across to the other man. So, you know, strength and conditioning, whey protein, all this is fine, but like when we were younger, it was the skills of the game. That was it. So your warm up was done with the ball and that. But so it's just to get the proper mix. But definitely, like, coaches have to be like sponges, and then they have to feed that down to the players, because like everyone benefits from it. Then as well, we'll say, you know, if you have 3 or 4 guys in your club that are involved in an inter-county setup, and they're doing all the right preparation and the right recovery and all that, and they come back into the club dressing room then, and you see them maybe on a foam roller, or you see them taking the recovery drink or doing the stretches. You know, I'd find now, even back with the club, some lads are asking lads, where did you learn that? Or that's what we do with the university team, or that's what we do with Tip Under Ryan. So there's a big role with coaches to educate the players, like, and the coaches to get educated elsewhere to feed that back. And you know, if I was back again, that's what I'd love to be. I would love to be more educated when you were 15, 16, 17, because I think it would definitely, you know, bring on injury prevention and prolong a fella's career.
What you said to me before, Owen, that players, something I think you said, Ian Sheedy said to you, that a manager or a coach is only with players 5 or 6 hours a week. You know, what can a coach do to influence a player's activities and behaviour away, like you've mentioned, that you were doing weights programs on your own, and in hindsight they may not have been the right things. What sort of one-to-one guidance can a coach give a player when he is only with him that 5-6 hours a week? And maybe as part of that, you'd say, how do things like, you know, all of the means we have of communication now, WhatsApp, etc., how do you manage that player relationship, so to make sure he's doing the right thing away from the pitch?
Yeah, well, like what I found about that in my latter stages, we'll say we had a Dropbox system, and everything you done training wise in the gym, on the pitch session, you just feed it all into it, and then it showed up that if you had X amount of done, you were in the red zone, and then it was fatigue. But I probably, if I'm being honest, I don't think that was monitored enough. I know we were feeding in the information, but I never remember being quizzed up on it.
Yes.
So sometimes guys are ticking boxes just as a management team, just to say, oh, we done that. But if you're doing something, you have to follow it through. But it's about communication. It's definitely about opening up lines of communication between players and management, like in that. But sometimes these are just fads, and lads like to say, oh, we have this system and that system. But if you're not following it through, there's definitely no point in doing it.
And for a player, like if you're a young player coming into a development squad, you're probably not going to say a whole lot, and you're certainly not going to quiz, and you're not going to say I'm tired, I'm with too many teams. What would you say to coaches in terms of how they can deal with players and spot things with players, and maybe go to the player and say, is everything okay? What's the role of the coach there, or how do you think they should go about connecting better maybe with players?
Yeah, well, no matter how long you play on a team, a club team or inter-county team, or what level of player you think you are, I think everyone likes the hand around the shoulder to be told, look, you're doing this amount of training, you need to maybe step up your training. So you have to talk to the player, and you'll find some players with teams, and they will say the marquee names on the squad, and sometimes a manager or a coach doesn't talk to them, because he thinks, how can I maybe talk to a Seamus Cannon or a Bubbles O'Dwyer or Paddy Marsh, or they have a couple of All-Stars and that, but that's not the case. All players like to be spoken to. So I think that's definitely something that coaches can definitely improve on. Every player has insecurities, and I even found that throughout your career, and some managers and coaches then mightn't read that. They might say, oh sure, he's now playing well and he's been All-Star the last 3 years, but that's not the case. So I think every player needs to be spoken to. The manager needs to know what makes him tick and what doesn't make him tick. So that's barriers that have to be broken down. I think that comes from the management, that you have to talk to players, because believe me, that if you asked a lot of the top class hurlers today playing the game, I bet you they'd all have insecurities, and that's just life, you know what I mean? So it's communication is a big thing, and definitely with Tipperary over a couple of seasons, that got better and better, and players felt more comfortable. And then if a manager is not comfortable, maybe then you delegate someone to do that role. And we often found that with teams, that someone would be delegated to talk to you, and then they'd obviously feed the information back to the management team and that. So it's just all players are equal. That's what I'm trying to say. So coaches, management need to talk to everybody.
You've mentioned skill development a few times. Where do you think there needs to be a focus there? Are you seeing differences in level of skills now with younger players coming through, or is there more work that needs to be done there, do you think?
Well, my thing, I suppose, look, this is all my experience over the last couple of years. A lot of sessions can be cone orientated, A to B to C, back to D, start at A again, but that's not game specific, so I think a lot of coaching has moved on now, and I've seen it in Tipperary the last couple of seasons, where it's game situation warm-ups, game situation tackling drills, forward play and all that, and I think players probably like that a bit more than just being boxed in, because hurling has evolved now, and a player is no longer, oh, he's a full back, oh, he's a centre back, no, he's a corner back. Players have to be able to play anywhere now. The day of, he only can play corner forward, I think that's in the past now. So everyone has to be able to adapt, is what I'm trying to say. So coaches then have to be able to adapt to training a team, because everyone is moving now. The game is moving now, and there's different systems to play in that. So I think players enjoy when they're playing high intensity game specific sessions and that. So I think that, and there's a skill element to that too, because you're controlling the ball and you're striking the ball and catching the ball when you're moving, you're not static, can sometimes happen maybe in drills. Now drills are fine to warm up in that, but it's just getting varying the session in that. But definitely the coaching has moved on, so I think players really like game specific training sessions that you're going to replicate then when the game comes.
Good.
the match comes.
You mentioned enjoyment there. I suppose first question is, did you enjoy it, particularly at underage level? And what do you think are the key things to make being involved enjoyable?
I did for the simple reason is that when I was going training with Tipperary minors on a Saturday morning, that was the only training that I had that weekend. And then I was looking forward to training with the Tipperary minors again, maybe on the Tuesday night, and again on the following Saturday morning. So I don't think it's enjoyment when you're training 4 or 5 nights a week. I mentioned already, like mental fatigue there, you're just sick of going to the gear bag. You know, like the best games you play are days when you're actually fresh and you're mad. That hurley might be left out of your hand for, you might leave it up on a Friday night and collect it again the Sunday morning and off you go. So that's the enjoyment I would have got out of it. You know, but I suppose I found in later years, even with Tipperary there now, maybe when you were older and maybe when you weren't on the team, you probably needed to do less to be ready for the game. Like for example, we played Kilmacud Crokes now in a game the Friday before the All-Ireland final replay in 2014, and we would have done a high intensity training on the Friday evening. And when I was older, I found you would have been fatigued there on the Saturday, and then you were going out playing Kilmacud Crokes at 12 o'clock, trying to show the management that you were in contention for the All-Ireland final replay maybe the following Saturday. But I remember doing the high intensity training on the Friday and being absolutely just dead to the world on the Saturday. Yeah. So if I was back again, I probably should have spoke to management and maybe said, look lads, I'll be fresh for that game on the Saturday, see how it goes, or against Kilmacud Crokes. But I suppose as a player you get older, you feel that if you're not doing everything, that the management and coaches are going to look at you different and say, sure, look, he didn't train on the Friday, rule him out. And I think that's a pressure with players as well. They feel they have to be doing everything. And sometimes injured players, even for underage, feel like they have to be training. Yeah. And I've heard stories of players going out for skipping games. One guy misrose 3 or 4 balls at the start of the game, and next thing they pulled him off after 20 minutes. And when they looked at his hand, he had about 6 or 7 stitches in his hand, just afraid to say it to the management that, look, I'm injured. So that pressure is still there, and I did come across that pressure when I got on later in my career. And I think probably management, but that's definitely something that you need to look at, guys, because S&C, drills, coaching, when do you want your player to deliver in the game? Yeah. And you know, look, if I could do something again, I wouldn't have trained on the Friday and been fresh to play Kilmacud on the Saturday to really put yourself to the forefront. And I didn't perform on the Saturday against Kilmacud, and you weren't in contention then coming off the bench for an All-Ireland. So that's the experience I have of it, you know.
Good. I'll throw it open to the floor. Any questions for Eoin?
Go back to that, Eoin. Go back to your days in St. Kieran's and training with the tip minors, and the tip management then put no pressure on you because you were with Kieran's to come to the minors, and you were happy with that. They were happy with that.
I was very happy with that, yeah.
Yeah. Was by any chance was there anybody from your club, a fringe player on the tip minors, in the same situation? Because like you were under no pressure because of your ability. You were going to make a tip minors anyway, and they were going to be glad when you came back. Like fast forward into the end of your career, you were struggling to get on the team, and you pressurised yourself to train, go through a physical training session on a Friday night prior to a challenge match that was going to make or break you.
Correct.
You know, like you had 2 worlds in your career. When you were young, there was no pressure put on you, and you didn't feel under pressure either because you felt you were that good at young that you were going to make it anyway, and you were playing with a great school. And then it happened to you at the end of your career. But there's a lot of young fellas at 15 and 16 that are fringe, you know, that are struggling maybe to stay on a tip panel or any county panel, and then what will they do? Will they train with their school or club or whatever it is, and then they feel that they have to go to the inter-county scene to try and hang in, like, you know, a lot of kids are putting themselves on that.
Right, so you were saying the 15 and 16-year-old, he's on the, we'll say, the inter-county panel.
Or, okay, go to the 17-year-old, sorry.
Right, so the 17-year-old is on the inter-county panel.
Hanging.
Right, he's hanging. But he's still doing the training with the inter-county panel, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, but like, what I'm saying to you, what do you say to the kids that is in that situation that is playing with a good school and then fringe on a kid?
If it's for a marquee player, it's fine, you're saying.
Yes.
But if you're not a marquee player, you're hanging on to the end of the squad, you're trying to make it at school, and you're trying to impress managers at multiple teams at the one time.
Well, like, you play with your school number one anyway, we'll say. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose that's where that chap then will say, right, he tries to perform inside with his inter-county 17s, right, but if he's hanging on then, do you know, he'll know himself like that he has to be performing with his school, we'll say. You know, but if he's going in, like, it's to get the fine balance. Like, if he's going in and wants to perform with the tip, we'll say, for example, under 17s on a Saturday morning in a game, and the school are training on the Friday night, well then I suppose he has to have the word with the management, the teachers in the school, and they have to understand too, like, and it's about being open. And he probably at 17 or 16, maybe a guy is afraid to say, look, I'm hanging on to this squad inside here now, and I want to be fresh tomorrow morning, I want to give it 110%. And that's where you'd hope the teacher would say, brilliant, yeah, don't do anything here, maybe just come in with the lads, don't do anything here on the Friday night. And, you know, and then I think a good coach or something might even ring that chap at 1 or 2 o'clock on the Saturday, well, how did you get on this morning? Do you know, and if he said, oh, it didn't go great now, or if he said, yes, it went well, you know, just build up that little bond there with even that individual there, like, you know, so.
I know, but wouldn't you have to agree though, that's where the burnout is coming in, like?
Oh yeah, oh look, that's what I'm saying, if that teacher wants him trained on the Friday night, he doesn't give a damn about what he does with say, the 617s on the Saturday, that's totally wrong there then, like, you know, and I said that from the start, like, do you know what I mean, it's coaches and teachers, I suppose, you know, when they're involved with a team, they want everything to be ran right. They ultimately, there's so much scrutiny on the 14, 15, 16, 17 managers now that it's all about winning. You know, because they think, I suppose, if their team is not successful, that it rules them out for any future management contentions in clubs, in schools, in inter-county teams. So it's, you know, it's very much scrutinised. But you'd expect communication between the player and the school teacher there to answer your question, that the player can say, look, I have a big game tomorrow with tip under 17s. Can I step out of training tonight? You know, and you'd hope the teacher would say, look, no problem at all. And then, you know, the teacher then doesn't sulk with that young fella and turn against him. That, you know, he rings him afterwards on Saturday, as it says, you know, how did you get on? Things go well for you. And if it went bad, you know, you build him back up again for your next school match that you need him for. You know, if it went well, then, like, you know what I mean, you have him eating out of your hand then, really, because you give him that free time to be rightly prepared for Saturday. So it's man management, really, to be honest.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, Owen, you talked about St. Kieran's College. Did you start off in Ballingarry first of all?
No, in Killinall.
Killinall. And secondly, what did St. Kieran's do for you as a platform going forward?
Well, to be honest with you, I thought just St. Kieran's level of hurling was college's A hurling. It was a higher speed, it was more physical, it was nearer to county minor hurling than, we'll say, vocational schools hurling. So it was more talked about, it was in the papers more, it was just a higher level. So you wanted to be playing a higher level. And I suppose there's examples of this. Look where the Dublin colleges have got themselves, look at the platform they've started with Dublin hurling. Dungarvan colleges, Waterford colleges, Ardscoil Reach, I suppose, Na Piarsaigh win the Club All-Ireland. How many of those players have played with Ardscoil Reach? Clonlara won the county championship a couple of years ago. How many of them players played with Ardscoil Reach? Ardscoil Reach was always probably a rugby school. It's probably a big hurling school now in Munster. You know, so, you know, as a player, I wanted to play at a higher level, and I definitely think playing at a higher level gave you maybe more confidence than when you were playing inter-county minor level. So, you know, when you felt that you could compete in colleges A hurling, you felt you definitely county minor, that you could perform well as well. So I suppose it was my own want to be involved in it, to be rubbing shoulders with these guys, and you know, I think that's what young players want, especially hurlers. Like, There's probably some hurlers in certain parts of Tipperary, and they hear the word Harty Cup mentioned, but they know deep down they're never ever going to play in it. So wouldn't it be great, even in this county, if we had a structure there that they could play Harty Cup, and maybe even in other counties as well, like, you know, Kerry College's team. And well, I have a mate that's involved in Ulster Council, and the Ulster teams, when they'd win the Ulster competition, they used to always get hammered. So they formed an Ulster College's team, and it was only up and running for 1 year, and they were beaten in the quarter final by a Galway team by one point. So he definitely felt that worked, but what happened with the Ulster Council Schools Board, they abandoned that idea, you know. So now those Ulster teams, when they win with their school, are coming into an All-Ireland semi-final or quarter-final, and they're getting tanked, like, you know what I mean, by 15, 20 points. So, you know, I wanted to be competing at a higher level. So sometimes inter-county schools and teams structure themselves that they can compete at a higher level, and that's ultimately what players want. So, you know, that's what you want to be involved in.
Yeah.
Owen, can I ask you 2 questions about mindset? When you were playing either players like Brian Murphy or Owen Murphy or Ollie Kelly marking you on a Sunday, so the fact that you knew you weren't going to be having a particular man marker assigned to you, how much did that influence your own preparation, or was it the case of going to play your own game, or would you modify your game depending on who was marking on Sunday? And the second part of that is, for example, Cork had a tactic of trying to flood your area, very often not to great success, but to try and stop you getting shots off. So were there days when you were out on the pitch saying, okay, my space is going to be quite crowded today, so I might be giving the ball back out to going forward more and so on. So I'm just wondering how much of it was preparing your own game and how much then was, I suppose, dependent on who you were playing and who you were marking.
Yeah, it does affect your mindset, because I have a couple of examples of it. Like, I remember the 2002 Munster final. I was due to be marking Brian Flannery. That's the way the teams were picked, and this was before all teams were changed around, so Brian Flannery was number 4. So I went out, walked into the corner, and next thing I was met by Brian Green. So it actually threw me straight away, and I said, what's going on here? And I knew then Justin McCarthy had obviously allocated Brian Green, because Brian Green had to turn the pace. And I remember that day I actually won a couple of possessions, but Brian Green never panicked, and he hooked me about 3 or 4 times. You know, so obviously Justin McCarthy had prepared him in training there a week or 10 days before, you know, 2 weeks before it, that this is going to be your job. So it was a master stroke by Justin McCarthy, and it worked the same day, because I was thrown, you know. But you know, you don't dwell on it too much, but you are aware of a guy you're marking, because like Ollie Canning, when he'd mark you, he had experience of playing in the forwards, so he'd always take 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, and he'd go and attack the ball. And I always hated a cornerback that'd do that. I loved the cornerback that's in behind you. So if I'd like to see cornerbacks playing in front of their men, because if you're an intercounty player, like, yeah, you're obviously going to have a good first touch in that. So I think you're asking a question at a corner forward straight away. When you go in, shake his hand, stand 2 steps outside him, and then you're attacking the ball. Whereas I loved the guy that was in behind you, because he ultimately had you were one up on him already, because he was marking you. You know, but the guy that was standing 1 or 2 steps in front of you, Ollie Canning, he was going attacking the ball, and you know, he had you thinking straight away, like. So you know, but it does change your mindset. But you'd know guys you're going marking now, but I think it's much different now, because before then you were marking 1 individual, now you're probably marking 3 or 4, so it's probably a different mindset. I think it's I wouldn't like to be hurling nowadays, to be honest.
I'm sure you do fine. Anything else? Anybody wants to ask one? Yes, back.
Just Owen, I suppose as coaches, we like the idea that we affect the player, you know, when we work with them. But if you think back, like obviously at under 14, you had loads of ability. So on the nature versus nurture kind of debate, how do you kind of see that when you look back on your own kind of adolescent career, like coming through? Was it more nurturing? Was it just down to ability? How do you kind of look back on that?
Yeah, my own history of that, like, is we had probably 3 or 4 strong players on the team, you know, under 12, 14, and then we dominated games with that. But as you got older, guys obviously get bigger in that. So it probably worked against us, because those guys were dominating under 14, under 12, under 14, but then under 16 we met guys that had developed, you know. So I think you can nurture players. I think that's the way, nurture players along. You know, and then when we got to minor, we weren't in the league at all, And even under 21 then we slowly came back into it, but it was 4 or 5 years there where other teams with smaller players, I remember at the time Killinall was a team, we beat them underage, but they had smaller players, so they obviously nurtured them along, whereas we probably took the eye off the ball and it was give it to X, give it to Y, give it to Z. So as time went on, the Killinalls got won more than us and played better than us, and actually I think developed more even onto their senior teams in later years. So from that example they nurtured teams along, whereas I'd say our successful teams underage, there might be only 3 or 4 of them went on to hurl senior, whereas with Killinall, who would have been our rivals at the time underage, they maybe developed, let's say 8 or 9, 10 guys onto their team. So I think you have to nurture players along, like, you know what I mean, like.
But for yourself personally, when you look back, do you see that it was more nature, or was it, were you yourself nurtured more?
Yeah, I probably was nurtured more, yeah, you were, because you were, yeah, you definitely were, like, you mean, protected I think is nearly the word I'd use, so, you know, nurtured and protected come hand in hand, like, you know what I mean, so, you know, look, you weren't flogged, that's what I found you weren't flogged, like, and I think that's what I found with my underage career.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions for you. Owen, basically, do you think you played minor 0-0 and Limerick beat you in a replay, and you were on the senior panel the same year, okay? You were probably on a college team and you were on a 21 teams and you were in an overload. So basically, your transition, I would always thought that a guy like you who was on the county senior panel should A, not be on the county senior panel at 18 your full year and be left in the minors, or the other way around. So do you think that it's right, looking back in your experience, that the good 18-year-old should, like the lad got on the minors last year, should be on the senior panel from the point of view of so what do you think of that?
Yeah, well, see, if I think back to even then, I came onto the senior panel after I finished my leaving cert, but we were gone out of the minor championship, so that was put to bed, that was put to one side. We were still in the under 21 championship, but we were knocked out a week or 2 later. But I think, I suppose when it comes to senior, I think if you're good enough, you're old enough. So if a guy comes out of minor and he's good enough, because like one bad injury at 21 or 22 can finish guys' careers, like, you know, and I suppose I see that with club teams. You know, if you have a 17 or an 18-year-old, I play him because one bad injury, you know, and I suppose even with the economy the last few years, like, guys emigrated, so you might say, oh, we've this great player now coming up along, 18, 19, next thing at 20 he's in America. He's not much good to hurling then at home, like, for your club and that, you know what I mean? So, you know, I think if a fella is good enough, he's old enough, like, you know, but like, as I said to you, with me, you only play kind of one team, so, you know, you weren't training with Tip Minors and then training with Tip Senior or anything like that. I was lucky that, I'd say if Tip Minors were still involved that year in 2000, to answer your question, I wouldn't have been called into the Tipperary senior panel.
The same question on, say when you played in the All-Ireland final, it seemed very much to be 2 midfielders, 3 half-forwards, 3 in the full forward line. By even reading the Brendan Cummins book, he used the phrase the matrix to describe the Eamon O'Shea style of ball work in that time. As you evolved as a player, at what stage did you notice the concept of the 2-man full forward line, the 1-man line, really coming in to dominate gameplay, and how did you prepare for that as I'm going to call it, traditional 3-man inside full forward line? What was the difference between you guys and the concept of space being created and movement being expected of you, whether to go in, go out, leave a man inside, and when you started out? Was there ever any specific work on, okay, this is a video, take it home, what do you think? Did you get to put an input into that as a group of players, or was it guided discovery, imposed? How did you transition to that from traditional to the new style?
Just before you answer that, just going back to your previous question, because I was in the Tipperary background team at the time, Owen didn't come in until the minors were finished, and that would be very much a priority of Mickey English even at that stage in relation to welfare. And I suppose secondly now, a minor can't be on a senior panel, and an under 17 can't play adult, so they're all player welfare driven initiatives and rule changes over the last couple of years. Or you can answer the second.
No, I will, yeah. But just like it's well documented now that Eamon O'Shea introduced all that movement to Tipperary and that, but I suppose the first few seasons with that, like, we kind of said, we're Tipperary, we're a traditional team, we'll play our way, you know, but I think over the last 2 or 3 seasons, or the last 2 or 3 seasons especially, I think Eamon O'Shea as a manager adapted to it a bit more, and sometimes it's actually a player on the pitch that can actually make the switch. Like last year, Bubbles was a corner forward. I think he, with that relationship with Eamon O'Shea, he just said to Eamon 20 minutes ago in that Munster final, he says, Eamon, I'd like a spin out there in the half-forward line for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And when he got out there, centre forward, he just felt his confidence was up. He felt he could turn the game. And when he got out there, Bubbles actually turned that game. He just put Tip from being 1 or 2 points ahead to being 4 or 5 points ahead by clipping a couple of scores outside. So, sometimes you can't have all players moving left, right, and making their own switches. But you just have to have it that you have trust 1 or 2 players that feel they can change a game for you. And I think that's great management there by Eamon O'Shea in that instance there. So, but only the last year or two, I think, is where Tip really looked at how defences were playing before. We kind of says, Tipperary will play our game and take them on. But I think we've seen maybe the difference between the 2 All-Irelands. The first day, we got loads of space in 0-14. Second day, Kilkenny then just totally clogged it up. And probably we got it wrong for the replay. So maybe a way of counteracting that was if we had to make a few positional switches with players, maybe try and win the game from outside. Like Seamus Canlan is as good centre forward as he is full forward. Now he's lethal full forward the last 2 seasons. But don't forget he can also play centre forward. That's where he done most of his hurling even the start of his career. So it's just changing things up,
Okay, we'll take 1 or 2 more questions. Yeah.
Just how much time outside team training would you have spent practicing?
If I'm being honest, I wouldn't have spent a whole lot. I probably always was poking around at home, we'll say off the wall and that, but there definitely wasn't a night where I says I have to be in the gym now or have to be in the wall at the wall ball there. So I probably just, when I was underage coming up the years, I just done the training, if I'm being honest. That was it. I just done the training and I was happy with that, and I felt I was fresh enough then. But I think as time got on then, that's when players started doing extra and started doing more. So definitely the last 4 or 5 years of my career, I was doing more, like going and meeting maybe a personal trainer one-on-one, trying to stay ahead of the game. But looking back now, I was probably flogging myself, But I was just desperate to be involved and to squeeze the last bit out here.
You just practice about 15-20 minutes at home every day, I take it?
Yeah, that was it, yeah. When you come in from school, hurl out, bang the ball off the wall away, and but sure, the nights then the club would be training, you'd go down, you'd have the ball in the hand, and you'd be shooting scores at angles and that, just poking around with the boys. But I found that was good. The hurl was always in the hand. So, and when you think of it, it was all skills. You were just hurling, you were doing something you enjoyed, you were poking around, you enjoyed it. So, but I never structured. When I was younger, I never structured sessions that I had to be at a wall ball tonight from 7 to 8, or had to be in the gym, or had to do a stretching. So I just done the training, which nearly go back to what Mickey Hart, we used to maybe train Tuesday, Thursday, game at the weekend, or train at the weekend, and that was it. And that was for the early part of my career, But I found as I got older, you tended to do more, which probably to the body, like in science, it doesn't probably make sense.
Okay, 1 more. Yeah.
Did you ever consider updating your Dropbox without doing the work just to get in the red zone?
No, definitely not. That's being honest with you. No, definitely not. The only problem you might have is guys mightn't update the Dropbox, but they were flagged all right. But I just felt in my experience with the Dropbox that no one went through it with me in much detail. You were doing it okay, but probably you never got the feedback to say, look, see what you done last night there now. What did you do? You want to go through it in detail. So. But you'd know yourself. I used to actually go to one of our maybe physical guys and just say, look, just feeling a small bit tired or whatnot. But ultimately, I think if you probably still do the training, And that was the latter stages of my career again. So as I said to you, didn't want to miss anything, because you felt that if you're missing training or missing a session, that you were ruling yourself out being picked or getting game time.
Okay, thanks very much, Eoin. I'm sure we could keep him here for hours. He has so much to impart. I hope that's been of good insight to you, loads of interesting things there. So thanks very much, Eoin, for that.
Good job.